All right. All right. So now I want to teach you some stuff you can do on import, and I want to teach you how to make a copyright that will be embedded in the information as you import it. You don't have to think about it until next January. So here's what we're going to do. What's that? Because it's a different year. Oh, we're going to do it by date. So, all right. So
the legal way.
So I would like you to follow along with me and do this. So we're going to go up to the upper left and hit File. And I want you to go to import photos and videos. Click on it, and we're going to get that import screen up. So File and then Import. And I don't really care so much about what I'm seeing on the screen, so we're just going to ignore that. What I want you to do is come over to the right-hand side, and you will see Apply During Import. You see that panel? And then you're going to see this one that says Metadata. I'm going to yours might look like this. It may say none in it. And I want you to click on the double arrows to the right of the word, and then you're going to get some options here. And I want you to click on the word New, and it's going to open a window. And so if you can't see anything below it, see that little arrow on the right-hand side? Is it open? See, this arrow needs to be pointed down. So just click on it and see if it'll open for you.
You clicked on the metadata one?
I clicked on metadata.
Okay.
Okay, so go to New. Click that, please. Now I'm going to expand the screen so we can see more of it all at one time. So I drag it down. Now, if you'll notice on my screen, some of these words are red, and yours may not be that way. So let's make it so that they are. So if you look on the left-hand side where it says Basic Info, and immediately to the left there's a little box. If you click on that, you'll notice that these 4 check boxes will pop open. So, and they're all red. I don't particularly care about any of those 4 except the top one, so I'm going to uncheck the bottom 3. Now I'm going to go down the way a little bit farther, so scroll down if you need to, and it says Iptc Copyright. And I'm going to use all 4 of these panels, so just click in that box in front of there, and it should highlight all these in red. Also puts check marks in there. You can do it manually, but this is the fastest way. If you go down to the next section, it says Iptc Creator. And again, you can click that box on. It will check all of these things. I'm going to go ahead and uncheck the very bottom one. I don't care about the creator, that being me. Job title, I don't think that needs to be on there. If you don't have a website, then you can uncheck the creator website if you don't have one of those. Or if you simply don't want some of these things included, you can uncheck them. And it continues on down, and there's a lot more information that you can add if you choose to add this to it. But for basic copyright information, this works fine. So I'm going to leave it at this for right this minute. Now let's go all the way to the top of the page, and if you click and highlight this, now we can type in what we want to call this preset, essentially, that we're making. Now, I'm making a copyright, so I like that little copyright symbol. You know, that's the little C inside the circle. But if you notice, that is not on your keyboard anywhere. So how do you do that? If you are a Mac user, go ahead and do this with me while I'm reading it to you. It is on On the when you get the PDFs at the end, when you see all the PowerPoint slides that I have made for this class, it will be information that's in there. But for Mac users, you want to hold the Option key and hit the letter G. And for anybody that's on a PC, it's different. So it's one of two things. And if this first one doesn't work for you, it might work just for the desktop. It seemed to work for me. But you hold the Alt key down, and then you want to type in 0169. And my keyboard's locked.
You shut the keyboard off.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. Okay, so see, now you can see I've got the that little symbol up there. And so now I want to type in the year, so 2019. And now I'm going to space and I'm going to put my name. So you type in your name. And I would type in my whole name. So type your name in there. Once you get that in, go down to the first red section where it says copy name, basic info. I type my name in that one. So you can type your name in that top one.
Did
So,
you say there was a second option for that C?
yeah, if it did all you PC users, did that work?
No.
All right, try this one because you're all on laptops, so you might need this. So you hold the Alt key down. You also hold the FN button down, which is right there close. Well, let's see, where is it?
Function button.
Function button. And then you type in 0169. Alt function 0169.
You got to hold down the Alt and function key while you hit the other three.
Did you get it? 0169. Did you highlight the top thing? Highlight where it goes in that top blank. Just click on that top blank.
Copyright office also recognizes parentheses,
Yes.
C parentheses.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, that's another acceptable way of
What is it?
parentheses.
It's not control. It's Alt function 0169.
It's not doing it.
Do you have a number pad to the right of your keys?
Yes.
Try that because I could not get the numbers at the top to work, but I could when I used that number pad on the right.
Did you get it, Connie?
Do you have a keypad on your right? Yeah, you have the number keypad on the right. Try using those numbers and see if it works for you. 0169. Did it get it? That's what happened with this computer too. Okay, so if you can't get it, Mike says that the Copyright Office will honor if you use parentheses. So try parentheses, C. So left parentheses, C.
Lowercase c, right parentheses.
So, you know, like you have the C and you got parentheses on each side. Now you need to go in and remember in January to go in and make that 2020. And I usually remember about June.
Isn't it embedded with your camera?
It could be. It depends how you get it's probably got your name on it, but
I've actually got into the things at the very end of the menu.
this is just
Is it embedded out?
and it maybe has your name, but does it have all this? I don't know. But I want to show you how to use this. If you don't want to, you don't have to. So type your name at the top. Now come down here to copyright. And in that blank, it would be, again, we need that copyright symbol going in there. So however you did it before, do you need me to repeat it? I will. So for PCs, it's Alt function 69. For Mac, it was Option G. And then the year and then your name. The next blank down, you have some options. So you just come over here, click the arrow. Is it copyrighted or is it for public domain? So if you want anybody to use it and be able to use it, then you would have public domain. Otherwise, it says copyrighted. The next thing down, click on it. And what I type in here is all rights reserved, no reproduction of any kind. So if it's embedded and somebody gets caught stealing your picture, it's embedded in there and it says you're not licensing that to anybody. Now you would change it if you told somebody they could print it.
Right, and be careful, because if you give your pictures to, you know, your daughter, your son, your grandkids, and they go to Walmart, Walmart will start checking these, and they may not print it for them if that's in there.
So yeah, that's something, a good point. So if you're going to give that in, then you'll want to go in and update your copyright and make it so that they have license to do so. All right, the next one down is if you have a website, go ahead and type it there. If you don't have one, you can uncheck that box. The next one down is creator. That will be your name again. So you can fill this in, your name, your address, city, state, US, the postal code, your zip code, USA, the phone that you want attached to it. If somebody sees your picture on Facebook, they absolutely love it. They check the metadata and they say, oh, that belongs to you. I'm going to call you because I want to buy that and use it. Then they can get a hold of you. You can put your cell phone number, your landline, whatever you want.
Yeah,
Your
they'll do
email
that 100%.
is the next one. What's that?
I said, and they'll do that 100% of the
You
time.
know they do. Every single time. Nobody ever steals anything.
Which
And
is
it-
why you only put out low resolution images.
There you go.
Yep.
And then a website if you have one. And at that point, you're going to hit create. If you get all those blanks filled in, you hit create. And I'll wait, so type it in as quickly as you can, though. Just your name and address. You can do this. I know you can. You've done it before. Come on. Okay, once you've hit create, we're ready to use it now. So let's go back over. If I can find my. Go back over to the right-hand panel. It says apply during import. There's two things sitting here now. One is the develop setting and one is metadata. And we're going to mess with both of them here. So we're going to go back into metadata right now, and you're going to hit those double arrows. And now instead of having just none, new, and edit, you're going to see that one you just created. So you're going to click on it. And so it fills in that blank. And then if you're going to go to develop settings, and if you were here last week, and I know you all were, we made a preset. Oops. Sorry about that. Oh, these are my presets. Okay, so if I come down, mine was in Lightroom class presets. Yours would have been under your name. And you notice if I hover over this one Lightroom class presets, you'll see basic lens correction. I'm going to click on it. And you notice it puts it in here. So now the next time I import any image, every single image is going to have this applied and my copyright information applied. If you don't want it there, all you have to do is come back in here, click none, and it will do nothing. If you knew that every single picture you wanted applied, you wanted to apply black and white landscape, this is a Lightroom preset that was there, you didn't make it, they made it for you, you can do that. I leave this one there all the time, and if I choose to unclick it, I will do that later. So that's what you'd put. Now here's a section on keywords. We're not going to talk about that a whole lot, but if you have images in this folder, and every single image has these things in common, then you would type in the words. So every single image in that folder was a picture of the I-74 bridge. Then you could type in I-74 bridge right here. And then you make a comma, and they were all taken in Moline. So you could type in Moline, comma, and they were all at sunset. You could type in the word sunset. Whatever you looked at, that described every single picture in there, you could put it there. If you decided that in that folder was also some pictures of your friends, and it was from a party you were at that was not at the 74 bridge, then you wouldn't want to put the I-74 bridge in there because it doesn't describe every single picture in there. And if there's not a commonality in every single picture in that folder, then you wouldn't want to keyword it at this point, because it's going to keyword every picture as it's imported. And if it doesn't apply to one of the pictures, it's still going to keyword it onto that particular picture. But later, after it's imported, you can go and apply keywords to individual pictures so that you're getting this right keyword applied to the right picture. Does that make sense? So we're going to move on from that one, and we're going to get into some other things. And I did want to point out, once it's imported, here's that metadata, the metadata panel. We're in the library mode. It's under metadata, and you can see right here that there's that copyright information, and that's the status right there. So it shows up, shows the name, and it also shows, you know, what camera you took it on and what lens you used and so on. All right, so now what we're going to do. How'd you get back to the? You can cancel out of this menu. So hit cancel at the bottom right-hand corner. Oh, I see. And then you'll be back into the rest of it. Now, I did want to just mention, and all I'm going to do is mention, as your images are importing, when you're importing images, and chances are you've been out, you've done a shoot of 100, and you're waiting for them to import. There are things you can still do in Lightroom, even though it's not finished importing, and I just want to mention them. You can go through and cull the images as you want. So they're in the process of importing, and chances are they're coming in grid view, so you're seeing 1, 2, or 3 add on at a time. You can actually come over here, double click on this, get it into loop view. Yeah, well, we'll come down here. Loop view, and you can say, oh yeah, I like this, and you can call through them by putting pick flags on it. Oh, I love this one, I hate this one, whatever the case may be, and then you can use your arrow key to go to the next picture. Oh, I love this one, I'm going to pick it. It's a pick flag, P for pick. Or you can go down to the flags that are down here. Pick it. Yes, I love it. Great. Move to the next one. Oh, this one I don't like at all. It's out of there. I'm going to hit reject. So I hit the, or you can hit the X key, which would be another way of marking. And if you put a flag on there and you decided you didn't want a flag on, you hit the U key and it'll go away. It removes the flag. That's in your keyword list that you took a photo of a while ago. So X is a reject. P is a pick, and U undoes it. Okay, so you can do that as you're waiting for everything to load in. You can also go to the develop module. You can start editing while it's still developing, or while it's still importing, if you want to do that. So just so you know that you can do that. So let's talk about moving files. Let's go to my PowerPoint now, if you wouldn't mind. All right, so moving folders. I want to talk about this, and we need to go through this kind of quickly. There are 2 ways to move folders. This is in the import menu, and you'll notice in the import menu there's that move. We've talked about the copy one, we've talked about the add. This is the move thing. So what this is doing, if you're doing it inside of the import menu, that means you have never imported this image into Lightroom. This is a brand new image that you may have had existing on your hard drive, and you want to add it into Lightroom, plus you don't like where you located it in your file system, so you want to move it to a new home. So what do I mean exactly? I'll explain that a little bit better. Just suppose, I'll give you an example. You had it on your computer's hard drive. It had never been loaded into Lightroom, so you wanted to do that, and now you've decided you actually want to store it on an external hard drive. You can do that all in one move if you do it inside the import menu. So that's when you would select the import menu. You're going to import it in and move it to a new location. So you find the folder over on the left-hand side. You find what folder you want to move. You make sure this is checked. Every image that you want to move in that folder. Then you'll come over here, scroll down to the destination. And if you now want to put it into an external hard drive, you would scroll down till you found that external hard drive that you have connected to your computer. Put it where you want it. And it will then hit import and it will move them and add them to the Lightroom catalog. And you can go ahead and check this so it'll come over as you want it, file handling wise. You can add this stuff during import. You can rename them if you want to. So you have a lot of options. We talked about how these all work. So you just have to refresh yourself when you go back to class 1 and learn about this again if you don't remember, and you'll be set. Now, if your images already have been imported into Lightroom, but you want to move them to a new location, you cannot do that in this import menu. You have to do it through the library. So, we're in the library module now, and I found an image. Now this is a single image that is in the wrong folder, and I want to move it to the correct folder. You can see this folder has flowers in it, and here is a picture from Switzerland. It needs to go in the pictures from Switzerland. So I find the photo in the wrong folder. Somehow I exported it or saved it back to the wrong location somehow. It's there. I'm going to simply drag that photo. I'm going to highlight it. If I click on it to highlight it, I'm going to drag it and drop it to where it belongs. And then you're going to get this scary as all get out warning come up. Oh my gosh, you are moving this file on your disk. This is not, you cannot undo this. That it's not really true. You can move it back. It's not going to go away. You're fine. So don't let this freak you out, because it kind of does when it pops up there. You read it. It's like, oh my gosh, is this really what I want to do? Well, if you're sure you wanted to drag that picture into that folder, my biggest thing would be to make sure you notice where it actually is going. Make sure that you actually are highlighting the file when you drag it down there. Make sure this lights up before you release it, and then it's going where you told it. And if you accidentally released it before you got to where you want it, before it highlighted, it probably dumped it on one of the files that's right next to it. So you go in there and look, and you can move it again. But don't let that freak you out too much, because it can. So let's say you have an entire folder that you want to move. So in this case, snowflakes, really I want in my macro folder. All I have to do is highlight the snowflakes folder. So I clicked it, and now I drag it up until macro is highlighted, and I let go of it once it is, and it will go in there. And again, you get this scary little warning, and you go ahead and say, yes, I want to move it, because as long as that's the folder you want to put it in, it will then automatically move everything, and you have to wait just a little bit of time, and you'll see the number click up, so it will add 125 images to the 545, and you can see that happening. So this is very important though, when you're moving files and folders and images, whatever, images or folders that are already in the Lightroom catalog must be moved through Lightroom. You cannot go into your file system outside of Lightroom and move it, or Lightroom will not be able to find them. This is very important.
One of the hardest things for people
to do, especially when you're new to it.
Starting out.
Yeah. So, but what happens is if you do that, you might have something that looks like this. So if you see these question marks pop up, what does that mean? And there's an exclamation mark up in the upper corner of my grid view, or maybe I'm in loop view and it says the file could not be found, and you think, what? You can't find my pictures? That's all of my pictures. What happened to them? That's sort of what can go through your mind. So you need to notice, oh, okay, this is my external hard drive in this case. This is not the internal one for the computer. It's an external hard drive. Every single one of them is missing. Plus, it doesn't even recognize that. Maybe your hard drive's not connected. So is it plugged into your computer? If it is plugged into your computer, did you eject it accidentally and not unplug it? So it needs to be unplugged and plugged back in, because all I have to do is plug in my hard drive and all those question marks will go away. And this little one will go away also. And this thing will go away. Now that's if it's stored on an external hard drive. What happens if you are on your internal hard drive and it still pops up? Because that can happen. Well, chances are great that you made the mistake of moving that folder or that image outside of Lightroom, and it can't find it because you moved it on them and it can't find it. It knows where it found it last, because if you right click on any of your files that have a question mark, if you right click, it pops up this window right here. And a third of the way down or a quarter of the way down, you'll see this show and finder. And if you click on that, it will say, well, the last time I saw it, it was at this location. And so that tells you need to go in and locate it. So you can click on the word locate, and what it does is it opens up your file system, and then you need to find out where you drug it to, because you are usually 99.9% of the time you have messed it up. So you need to figure out where you drug it to and tell it. That's all you have to do. You have to just tell it. So it'll say, once you find it, you click on it and hit locate, and it will then bring that information in and it will remember it. You can also right click and you'll get this find missing folder. You can click on that and that's what brings this up. So, all right, so now let's talk about finding parent folders and what are parent folders. So I'm going to have you click back over to Lightroom for me, please. And I'm going to show you my file system here. I find my cursor. Can't find it.
Here.
There we go. Okay. All right, so here's a perfect example. These things are showing up, but they're not showing up inside their parent folder. If I go to the file system, these are inside another folder. And so sometimes this will happen. You've made some new folders as you imported, and they were inside another folder and it doesn't recognize them because it never has done that. So maybe a lot of times it happens when you're adding them in or moving them, that it didn't have that parent folder showing before. And if you don't understand what a parent folder is, I'm going to show you in just a minute. But we'll say you have a travel folder, and inside that travel folder you have a Colorado folder. Well, the travel folder is the parent folder. So if I come over here and I right click on, I'm going to select that, and I'm going to right click on it, you will look over here and it says show parent folder. This doesn't show up unless it has a parent folder. So I got lucky when I put these on this club computer and it gave me this, because otherwise I was just going to be able to talk about it, but now I can show you. So yes, this is what I want to do. I'm going to click on that. And now you'll notice it just brought in the parent folder. Did you see that just pop in there? This Lightroom Class 3, that's what it did. And that was my parent folder for those. So that just cleans up the organization system of your file, of your library there. Any question about that? All right, so we're going to move into the develop module, and we're just about out of time. We are not going to get through everything I want to talk about. Let me see what I'm going to bump. All right, let's talk about this because we've got this up. So this is Pano. I have I shot these 4 images. I want to make a panorama. I want to put them all together. And how do I go about doing that? Because it will do it right in Lightroom. So the first thing I have to do is select all 4 of these. So in order to select multiple things, if they're all in a row, all you have is I have the first one highlighted. I'm going to highlight the last one. Well, I'm going to shift and click on it, and it will highlight all 4 of them. Okay, so once they're all selected, whether it's 2 or 10, it doesn't matter. I'm going to left or right click on any one of these pictures, and I'm going to come down here about 1/3 of the way down. It says Photo Merge, and as I hover over that, you'll see some options. Is it an HDR, a panorama, or an HDR panorama? We're just going to work with a plain old panorama. I'm going to click on it. It's going to open a new window, and if you will push it to me. So it opens this window, and you can see it's building the pano for me. And there it came in. So it stitched all 4 pictures together, and it gave you some options over here. I have spherical, cylindrical, and perspective. Now, perspective can do some odd things. And I know I tried this out on this picture earlier. It doesn't do odd things on this one. Cylindrical, I think, works really well with it. I use this quite often. Spherical tends to make it a little narrower. It wasn't much difference in this case. All 3 of these are almost identical. And you can click through them and see what works. If you have buildings, you can see there it did something weird. See how it did that? It puts everything in kind of what it thinks is the correct perspective. So sometimes it will just tell you this does not work for these pictures, and it'll tell you that right up front. So then you have to click, and sometimes it doesn't work at all. But I would say 99% of the times it does. But once in a great while, you've shot the pano wrong, or it just has a trouble fitting it together, and it'll say it doesn't work. You can take it into Photoshop when you know that you've shot it right. Sometimes you can take it into Photoshop and get it to merge there without any problem. That doesn't happen very often. Usually this works great. And you can usually choose, and I've never used perspective. I've always used one of these 2. And you'll notice there's a little bit of white gap on top and bottom. I did this handheld. I did a pretty darn good job hand holding this. Sometimes if you don't follow the horizon, you may get some pretty, between each image, you might have a lot of variation, so you might have to crop it down. But there's this cool little tool here, and it works most of the time. Sometimes you'll see that it starts to put a curve in things. You may not want it, but be aware. And you can slide this boundary warp to the right, and you'll notice it filled in those gaps for me. So that was pretty nice. You can do an auto crop if you prefer. Like if my images didn't line up and I had big gaps at the top and bottom, you can do an auto crop. I personally prefer to do my crops myself because I might be able to go in and replace some sky stuff in Photoshop. Now, if you don't use Photoshop, you might want to go ahead and let it auto crop. I, again, don't. Auto settings, you can choose to crop or try that out by clicking it or not. Create a stack. What that means is when it merges, it'll put all 4 of these images in a stack with the HDR or the pano that it's going to create. In this case, I'm ready to hit merge because it looks good. It looks like it stitched it nicely. I'm going to hit merge, and now it's doing its task. So it's going to make it, and it's going to stack it right next to my images. And we're just waiting for it to do it. You can look in the upper left-hand corner, and you will see that it is creating a panorama. And so it's just taking it a little bit of time. When it's done, it will come in, and it looks like it's stalled. When I shoot my panoramas, I overlap a minimum of 20%. So, you know, sometimes you almost feel like you're overdoing it, but it needs that 20 to 25%, even 30% overlap so that it can stitch them together. It just needs that so it finds out how it goes together.
And always take a little bit more to allow for a crop afterwards.
Yeah, that's a good, shoot wide in other words.
Those white spaces don't fill in quite right, and then you've got to crop it down even more. So always shoot a little extra.
So this is an oddball one that I shot. Now, you can shoot, this is just one pass. I can make 2 passes to get the entire building. You know, so I could have gone through and shot a whole row, getting almost all sky except for the very top of this building that's on the pier. And I could have taken a 3rd row and gotten the water in if I wanted. And you can do right to left, left to right. It doesn't care. It can figure it out, and it will merge them almost always 100%. You know, 95% of the time, it's going to merge it fine. Oh, there goes that thing again. Oh, I need to.
Boy, that one aspect, you get a lot of wiggles on that.
I got a good view, that's why. So you can double click it and you can see it, and now you're ready to edit it. You can take it into develop and you can do whatever edit you want to it. I generally edit after I merge. That way I don't have to worry about the color being wrong on one, you know, they don't match up. I've got too much vibrance or too much this or that on any one of those individual images. So I merge them first and then do the edit. Did you have a comment?
I just said that this is a raw file.
Oh, yes. And if you do it in Lightroom, it stays a raw file. If you take it in, which gives you more editing power, if you take it into Photoshop to do the merge, which you can, or some other software, when it comes back into Lightroom, it's not a raw image anymore. It's a PDF or a PSD or a TIFF, whatever you decide to save it back as. Is there any questions about that? Let's see what time it is. All right, so now I'm going to go over, and I want to go back to my library here. I'm going to go back into library mode. And I want to show you how to do an HDR merge. I don't know if you use HDR or not, but what HDR means is that you have 2 or more images exposed at different things. So you can see in this case, I have a light, a medium, and a dark. This is my metered image, and I have one stop over and one stop under. And if you put them together, ideally what can happen is you can get more latitude in your shadows, so you can pull up the shadows better, you can bring down your highlights better. So how do you do that? Again, I would select all 3 by holding my, activating my first one, holding my shift key, clicking on the second one. Now I'm going to do a right click. I'm opening the same menu you saw before. I'm going to photo merge again, and there is HDR. So I'm going to select that. Brings up a different window than the one we had for panel. And it's creating an HDR for us as we watch it. But you'll notice while it's doing its thing, we'll talk about over here, it's auto lining. I have that checked, especially if you're hand holding. Those pictures may not be aligned, and it's lining up the edges otherwise. And if you need it to line up the information that's in the picture, like the picture itself, if you hit auto align, then it does its best to overlay that water tower within each picture so that they line up. Now, if you're on a tripod, it's not as critical, but that's what you do if you're handheld. You want to keep that. You can do auto settings, so it will decide how, it's kind of like hitting that tone button, that auto tone button in Lightroom. It'll decide how it thinks would be best exposed, so you can do that. Now down here it's talking about deghosting amounts, and right now none is clicked. And I can come down here and click anywhere along this and all the way to high. And it depends how you capture the images, maybe, to whether you need to worry about deghosting. If you're under very controlled situation, maybe you don't need any deghosting because there's no ghosting going on. Now, what is ghosting? If I took 3 pictures and I was hand holding, there's a good chance I moved. And if it's windy out, there's a good chance that something in that picture moved. And so what it does is it finds the areas that are different between the pictures, and it will try to pick one of the pictures to do, we'll say these trees. See, there's 3 little branches over here. And maybe the wind was blowing, and it will pick one of the pictures to use those branches out of, instead of having a little bit of all 3 show, and so it looks ghosty. And you would want to show, maybe you want to see where it's, what areas in this picture were ghosting, and you can see that is where the ghosting was happening. So you will pick those according to how much possibility there is for movement, whether it was your movement or the thing was moving that you took the picture of. And then once you're ready, you'll hit merge. And it will take, and it's starting to create an HDR, and again, it'll sit it right alongside the 3. Now it should, when it comes in, it should set it there, and it's going to have a new name on it. And as soon as it lands in, and I didn't point it out on the panel, but you can look over here. See, the rest of these are named HDR 1, 2, and 3. That's how I imported them over here. This one says HDR 1, and then it says HDR. I wish I wouldn't have named them that because it's a little confusing, but it always adds this HDR back here to it, and it's a DNG when it creates that. So that's the one that's the HDR image. I'll click on it. I'll move it in the develop module by hitting the word develop or the D key. And at this point now, I can go into do the editing that I want. So I can pull up the shadows if that's what I want. And you've got a lot more leverage with what you can do on an HDR. And so you can go ahead and treat this the way you want to. That's how you do an HDR. And if you'll notice, there was also the opportunity to do an HDR panel. And if you don't know what that is, I'll just real briefly explain it. It would be as though you took 3 exposures of each move within a panel. So if you were we'll just for easy explanation, you did a 2-image panel. So you did a left one, and then you rotated your camera enough to do the right half of the picture. But while you were on the left, shooting the left, you took maybe you had a +1 exposure, you had your metered exposure, and you had a -1 exposure. Then you went over to take the second image, and you overlapped by 30%, and then you did another +1, a metered, and a -1. And now it has 6 pictures to turn into 1. And it will know how to do that, and it will make a panel that has this HDR ability to it, where you have that greater degree of dynamic range within it. Because HDR, for anybody that doesn't know, stands for high dynamic range. It means it has a lot more range than an individual image.
Have you ever done that?
I have. I'm not very often. Luckily, the cameras that I own, yeah, they have a high dynamic range for each individual picture. I do shoot a lot of bracketed because sometimes I like to do blending as opposed to HDR, but it works great. And you don't have to divide them out. You don't have to do them HDR first and then panel. You can just do it all at once. It'll do it all at one time. So any questions about that? I wanted to tell you that because I think I love doing panos. So I thought you might want to make sure you did that. We have just a couple more minutes that I'll go over something really quickly. Let's see. I showed you the shortcuts page already, so we don't have to do that. We're pretty much, I think you know this, but just in case, let's go to grid view. And I'm going to go to this folder. And I have a lot of pictures in here. I'm going to close down these windows. By hitting the tab key, it'll close all my panels on the side so you can see all of it at once. And then to get them back, I just hit the tab key again. But I'm going to close them now. So you can see I have a lot of images in this particular folder. And you can look at them. I did not color correct when I took these. It was a night shot. We were in Chicago. Actually, this is pretty true. I just didn't compensate for the orange lights that were downtown, but I really preferred a picture that looked more like the second one, which has been edited. So let's talk about how you can select pictures. Right now, the only photo that is selected is the one on the left, this upper one. And you can tell because the box is lighter. If I want to select this entire row, it's just like I explained before. I go to the last image that I want to pick and I hit shift and click and it selects all of them. You can see that 5 of the 6 are kind of a lighter gray, and then there's a very light gray on the left. I'm going to call this lightest one the primary one. So this is the one that's the most important, and then all the rest of them are going to be affected if we do something to it. But before we move on to what we might be able to do to it, let's look about how we could add some more pictures. These all very conveniently were all in one row. And maybe I don't want all the next row. How can I just grab this one picture and add it to the ones I have selected? Well, all you have to do is hit Control or Command and then click, and it will add it in. And so you can go through and you can selectively add some that are not contiguous. So now I have these pictures all selected. Well, what if I don't want this one selected anymore? How do I get that out of there without losing all of them? All you have to do is hold the Command or Control button and click it again, and it will come off of there. Now, I wanted to go into my Develop module, and I've already edited this picture. And I like the lighting, the white balance that I have on this one, and some of the other things that I did to it. I would love to copy that information to all of these pictures that I've selected. But I don't want to have to go through and do it all manually. I don't want to have to remember all those sliders that I've moved and all the radial filters or gradient filters that I may have added. I want it to treat them all exactly the same without having to do them all individually. How can I do that? Well, what I would want to do is make sure the one that I have edited, which is this one, is the one that's the brightest white. So all I have to do is click on it. I didn't hold any other buttons. I just simply clicked on it, and it moved my prime selection to this particular image. Now I'm ready to go into the Develop module. So I could go up and click on the word Develop, or I'm going to hit the D key. And it's going to show me the prime one, the one that I selected, the primary one I selected, highlighted, is the one that comes into view. And you'll see there are some sliders already over here moved. And you'll look down at the bottom, and we have 2 options down here. One says Sync, one says Reset. We don't want to hit the Reset because it'll take it back to Undone. Let's hit the Sync button because we want to sync all of those images to this one image, what was done to this image. So I have some options here. To open this window, I can check all, so it'll sync everything it did to that picture. Every single thing on here will be synced to all of those pictures that I had highlighted. What if I didn't want it to do the crop? This picture has a crop on it. I don't want it to crop. I don't want it to do the crop to all those pictures. So I just have to uncheck this one. You know, if there's something you did, maybe you don't want it to do the gradient filter, or you don't want it to do the radial filter, then you can uncheck those. We'll go ahead and leave it at that. And sometimes it doesn't do well to do the transform. That maybe you need to do individually. So we'll uncheck that one. And I know I didn't put anything in effect, so I'll go ahead and uncheck it, but it wouldn't matter. I could leave it checked if I wanted to because it's not doing anything to it. And once I have figured out what I want, what information I want it to transfer to all those pictures, and I'm satisfied with the boxes I've checked, and you can uncheck maybe any one of, see there's several listed, well maybe you want to uncheck that one and leave those other two checked. You can do that. And once I get it, I'll hit synchronize. And it had something going on in the upper left-hand corner. I don't know if you noticed it, but now if we go back over to the grid view, it looks kind of the same, but now they're filtering in. You can see it starting to do something to each one of those images. Now, it didn't necessarily work on all of them, so let's go in and look here for a second. Let's look at this first one. So we're going to take, and I want to actually unclick some of these. I just want to have this one. So I'm going to just click out of there and click back in. And I'm going to bring this into develop. And now, you know, it went a little crazy on the exposure on this one. So this one wasn't as dark as the other, or as light as the other one. It didn't need so much. So then I can bring down any slider that I think didn't work as well for it and leave it at that. And now I can come in if I want to do the transform, and I can try do an auto transform and see if it straightens it up the way I wanted it to. And I can do more editing to it, or I can undo some of the editing that happened with the sync, but at least it took care of a lot of the problems. So that's how that works. Pretty slick.
You know, if you didn't like any of what you brought over, what you synced, yeah, can you click on the individual picture and just say, I want to go back the way it was?
Yeah, you could reset it.
Just hit Control Z.
You could do, if you hit Control Z, it will unsync all of them.
Okay.
So it'll take the sync away from every single picture, but suppose you only wanted it to take the sync away from one picture, so maybe this one, because that was synced before. And so if I took that back into develop and it's too dark, I don't like anything it did to it, then I can come back down here and hit reset, and it will reset it individually, yeah.
That synchronizing is a huge time saver.
So if you have a whole line of photos that you forgot to change your white balance on, and you shot 2 or 102 pictures, it doesn't matter. And you can go in and you can fix one and then sync that white balance change to every single one. Works great. Anything else? Any other questions? We got through almost everything after all. So I did push it a couple, 5 minutes over. So I still haven't talked to you about the snapshots and history panel in develop, but other than that, we got through it all. That's pretty good.